This morning I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, hailing from La Isla de Cuba, Leyanis Diaz, a social entrepreneur and an avid philanthropist. Leyanis is the founder of Major Marketplace, an online marketplace for minority businesses and those who want to support them. Major Marketplace was a winner of the 2017 American Entrepreneur Award. Leyanis was Miss Black Florida USA 2017 and has worked with the Embrace Girls Foundation, Dream Defenders, the South Florida Black Business Directory, the South Florida Women of Color Empowerment Institute, and more to empower minorities and women through the entrepreneurship and technology. Please join me in welcoming Leyanis Diaz.
Amazing. I'm gonna open this water so that it is ready to go for me. Okay, hold on. All right, let's do this. Well, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. You know, at some point I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to make it I didn't think that I was going to be able to make it today, and you know, I got the flu last Saturday, and I've been trying to fight it ever since, and I don't know if it's the energy in here, or just being back at FIU, or in Miami, or maybe it's all of the cough medicine that I've had leading up to this, but surprisingly today is the best that I have felt all week, so thank you. But you know, getting sick this week, made me realize that you never really know what life is going to throw at you. You just never know, and there's no way to know. But regardless of what happens, you just have to keep finding the energy, finding the strength and the courage to keep moving forward, because it's really all you can do, right? And so even through all that, through my not-so-cuteness, the runny nose, and me feeling terrible and coughing on people on a 10-hour flight to get here, I'm here, and you're all here, and I don't know about you, but I think that that deserves another round of applause, because it's early on a Saturday, and we are here, and we made it, and now we're here at the Student Leadership Summit, and you know, we're here to learn from one another and laugh and think and to be inspired by one another. And that's really what I hope that you get out of my talk today. I hope that you're able to learn something, and that you laugh, and that you think, and that you hopefully are inspired. And I hope that you take my story and all of the stories that you're going to hear today with you when you leave. And I hope that these stories help you become even better leaders and even better people. So I got an email last September from Amanda, who works with student conduct and conflict resolution here. And the subject read, "Speaking at Annual Student Leadership Summit, February 2nd, 2019, which is today. I read the message, and it essentially said that they were looking for a keynote speaker, someone who was an FIU alumni and someone who students could relate to. And I remember reading the message a few times because I was like, wait, what? Like, what is this? Why am I getting this? And then my imposter syndrome just started kicking in. And so for those of you that don't know, imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their accomplishments, and you know, they have this persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Like, it's not a disease and it's not contagious or anything, but it's just something that I deal with, that I know that I have to deal with and that I am working through. And so I'm reading the email, and Amanda was like, you know, I think you'd be a good fit, you know, just let us know if you're interested and available. And so I'm reading it, and it's almost like I couldn't believe what I was reading. And then the doubt just started kicking in. And all I could think of was, why me? Why did they reach out to me to do this? This is crazy, right? This is crazy, as I'm talking to myself in my apartment. This is insane, right? Yeah, it's insane. And so I did what I always do when I have to make a decision or I'm doubting myself. And I turned to my tribe. And now, don't get too excited, my tribe is literally my mom and my siblings and boyfriend and my best friend Andrea, who I think may be somewhere in here. And so I told them, like, hey, FIU sent me this email and they're looking for a speaker for an event and they're considering me, and all of them were like, wait, like, this is amazing, this is huge, this is incredible, you have to do it, say yes, you're going to be great, you're great, and you know, you have this amazing story to share, like, just do it, you need to do this. And the more I thought about it, I was like, they're right, I do need to do this. Like, this is something that I've always wanted to do, and I shouldn't let the opportunity pass me by, right? And so I say all of this to say that it doesn't really matter how successful we become, how much money we're making, or how cool or famous we are. Like, we're always going to deal with real, regular human emotions and stuff. You know, we're going to deal with doubt and being nervous, and like, we're always going to deal with this why me mentality. And you know, someone once told me that if your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. Think about that for a second. If your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. Well, my name is Leyanis Diaz, and I literally wake up terrified every single day. Like, my dreams really do scare me, and I think it's more the fear of failure than anything else, you know, but it's because I have a lot riding on this. I have a lot of people depending on me who sacrificed a lot for me to get here and who are cheering me on. And so this is me. This is little Lay. I was one in these pictures and we were celebrating my birthday. And I don't know if you can tell from the pictures, but this is in Cuba. I was born in Havana, Cuba, and emigrated to the United States along with my parents when I was 3 years old. And most people don't believe me when I say this, but I grew up in some of the roughest neighborhoods in Miami. Like, when we first got here, we were living with my aunt in Liberty City, then we moved in with my grandma in Little Havana, and then we eventually got our own apartment a few blocks away from my grandmother's house. By then I was 4 or 5, so I started school at the closest elementary school, which was Riverside Elementary School, which is on Southwest 2nd Street and like 12th Avenue. And you know what's funny is, I remember being at an interview once. It was an interview for an internship that I was applying for and really wanted, and I remember it being like the weirdest interview I had ever been a part of. And I think it's mostly because I didn't really know like where it was going, but I also didn't really know like how well it was going. Like, I left that day and I didn't know if I was going to get the job or not. Yeah, like, we've all been there, right? So anyway, the interviewer asked me, you know, what high school I went to. So I said, Miami High, which is in Little Havana. She then asked me, well, what middle school did you go to? And I remember thinking, like, why do you care what middle school I went to? But I said, Shenandoah Middle School, which is in Coral Gables. And then she asked me, what elementary school did you go to? And at that point in my mind, I was like, this is just, like, weird, right? Like, why does she want to know all of these things? But I said, Riverside Elementary, which is in Little Havana. And she says, wow, like, you're really a Miami girl. And I just sat there like, what does that even mean? And I like awkwardly chuckled and said, yeah, I guess so. But till this day, I still wonder like why she asked me all those questions, but I guess she was like testing how like Miami I was, and I must have passed the test or something because I ended up getting the internship. So yeah, I guess I'm a Miami girl. And I don't know how many of you grew up in Miami or what growing up in Miami was like for you, but for me, growing up in Miami and being Afro-Latina, even in a city as diverse as Miami, was tough. You know, it was tough, man. Like, I always felt weird and out of place, like if I was a unicorn or something. I remember I told someone at school while I went to Riverside that I was Cuban, and he was like, I didn't know there were black people in Cuba. Like, I've never seen someone that is black and Cuban before. And I kind of chuckle at that now, because I'm like, hello, there are black people everywhere, I got a clue. But for 7-year-old me, that really did something to my self-esteem, you know? Because I would look around me and I didn't see anyone who really looked like me or talked like me or who had an embarrassing grandma who wore these like colorful Cuban skirts like mine, who was like picking them up from school. And for me, it just made it really hard to feel like I belonged. And I think for me at the time, it was just a lot to deal with. So instead of embracing who I was, I started hiding how different I was and just started trying to fit in. Like I rejected everything that was Cuban. I rejected arroz con pollo, rice and chicken, and asked for Happy Meals instead, and I spoke English every chance that I got. And eventually, I was just more American than I was Cuban, which was fine with me, but looking back now, it probably broke my family's heart. And I don't think that it hit me just how removed or out of touch I was with who I was until I was in the 8th grade and we had to do a project and give a presentation about where we came from. And I remember just feeling lost and having all of these questions. So I asked my mom and grandma for help, and it was like I was hearing and learning all of these things for the first time. Because even though I was born in Cuba and visited once or twice at the time, it didn't really feel like it was a part of me or a part of who I was. And since then, I feel like I've been in search of finding who I really am, because I realized that it's really hard to know where you're going without knowing where you come from and who you come from. In my case, my parents had me at a pretty young age. My mom was 20 and my dad was 22. And they didn't really get to finish school and they dropped out early because of circumstances. But between you and I think that if it wasn't for me, they probably would have dropped out at another point, because growing up they always kind of talked about how school just wasn't for them. My mom was in school to be an accountant, and my dad wanted to fix and make cars. And it's funny because for two people who didn't like school, they always instilled in me how important getting an education was. I remember walking to school one day with my mom. I was 10, and I told her about this guy named Jose that I liked in school, and she just looked at me. And she said, "I don't send you to school to like boys. I send you to learn." And she probably doesn't even remember this now, because it was just such a long time ago, but this was the last time I ever told my mom about a guy. Literally the last time. Sorry, it turned off. The timer? All right, we're just gonna keep going, it's fine. So fast forward, and it's the beginning of my senior year at Miami High. I remember that the college advisor at our school was holding these assemblies, telling all the seniors how important going to college was, and that it was mandatory that we all apply to at least 2 schools, and one of them had to be Miami-Dade College. And seeing as how Miami-Dade's Inter-American campus was just a few blocks away, it made sense. And after the assemblies, each homeroom class was booked for time in the library. During that time, we were supposed to be applying to colleges, and the college advisor and our homeroom teacher would be walking around in case we had any questions. First, we had to apply to Miami-Dade, so they walked us through that. And then we were free to spend the rest of the time applying elsewhere, wherever we wanted. And it's funny because before then, I hadn't really thought much about college or going to college or where I'd be going to college. I was having a lot of fun being in high school. I know it's pretty lame, right? I was a cheerleader and I was cool and I'm popular. Whatever that means or whatever weight that holds now doesn't really matter. And I remember sitting in the library thinking about where I wanted to go, what I wanted to study, and what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I remember thinking, these are such big life decisions. Why do we have to think about this now? Decide this now. Everything just felt so rushed. And for me, I just wasn't ready. Financially, any schools outside of Florida and UM just didn't make sense. And personally, I wasn't really ready to move away from home. So UF, UCF, FSU, and any other Florida school outside of Miami were just out. So that really only left FIU. And I think that some people may look at that and think like, oh, you only wanted to go to FIU? But I was okay with that, more than okay with that actually, because you may not believe me when I say this, but FIU was my dream school. And really it was all of my family's dream school. I remember going through FIU's website with my parents and just seeing how happy and how amazed they were at how good of a school FIU was, how close it was to them, and how much better off I'd be after graduating. And my high school did this thing where at the end of the year, before all the seniors graduated, they would print out this huge banner and put it at the front of the school. The banner had each senior's name and where they were going the following year. So I, looked for my name on that big old banner, and next to it read Florida International University in big blue letters. For my class of 2011, there were people going to UF, UM, FSU, UCF, some small out-of-town community colleges, Miami-Dade College, of course, and there were about 3 of us going to FIU. So I started FIU. And my first year here, I was one of those students who just went to class and went home. I didn't want to spend any more time on campus than I had to. I didn't really talk to anyone unless I had to. And I spent most of my time on campus alone in the library waiting for my next class. And my schedule my first year was terrible. I would have 3 or 4 hour breaks in between classes and was on campus Monday through Friday. I would go to class, and as soon as I could, I would go and hang out with my friends, most of which were either attending Miami-Dade College or were still at my high school. This went on for about a year or so. At the time, there was a summer enrollment requirement at FIU. I don't know if that still exists. Okay, cool. So I'm not that old, cool. And that stated that all students, entering FIU or any other university in Florida with fewer than 60 credits, had to take 9 credits in the summer before graduating. So I took intercultural communication, social choice math, and public speaking during the summer of 2012. And I finally made 2 friends. They were in my public speaking class, Maria and Priscilla. And I remember having lunch one day with them before class, and Maria mentioned how she wanted to go through sorority recruitment in the fall. And I was like, what's that? And why do you want to do that? All I knew about sororities was from what I had seen in movies, right? And the cattiness, living in the same house with a bunch of other girls, and the constant partying weren't really my scene. But Maria mentioned that her cousin was currently in a sorority at FIU, and that it was nothing like that. It was about sisterhood and personal and professional development and community service. All things I was interested in and things that I felt like I needed and wanted. At the time, though, sorority recruitment only happened once a year. So it was either do it now as a sophomore or wait until junior year. And I didn't want to keep just going to school and going home. I would walk through GC and see tables upon tables of people in clubs and organizations who seemed to be having the time of their lives, who were really making this the best 4 years of their lives. And after being so involved in high school, I wanted to be a part of something. I craved to be a part of something. We're gonna skip through here real quick. Okay. So in the fall, all 3 of us went through recruitment. My second year, I was working at Nike in Dolphin Mall to make some extra cash. So I would go to class in the morning, go to work in the afternoon, and spend my evenings that week visiting different sororities, speaking to the women that made up their chapters, learning about their organizations and about what they valued. Every woman going through recruitment started with 7 organizations on their list. And every day we were to narrow down our choices until eventually we chose one. Priscilla and I chose FIU. And Maria went AZD like her cousin had before her. And I get this question all the time, like, why FIU? And for me, you know, for all of us, it's something different, right? But for me, FIU was the only room where I walked in and I felt like I could be my true self. You know, where you're just so comfortable that you feel like you could be all parts of you. My nerdy side, my cool side, my adventurous side, my weird side, my gross side. Like, all of those sides were accepted and embraced, and neither side was ever judged. To me, FIUs were the smart, involved, funny girls, and it's who I was and, you know, who I wanted to be. And since then, FIU and all the people that I met from being a FIU have continued to pour into my life just as much as I have poured into them. You know, most people who aren't Greeks say things like, Greeks pay for their friends. Right? And whether or not that's true, which FYI it's not, but I'm Greek, so I'm biased. You know, it was well worth the money because through the good or the bad, I know that they're going to be there for me just like I'll be there for them. Alright, so I became a peer advisor in 2013, and I have to say, is Corinne here?
She won't be here.
Okay. She's not here now. Okay, let's just get it all out now. No, I have to say that it was the most demanding but rewarding part of my experience at FIU. You know, as a peer advisor, you train for about 6 months to learn everything there is to know about FIU, and I mean everything. Like how many tiles are like on the ground kind of thing. Just in case anybody ever asks, you need to know. And then you spend your summer doing the same thing every day, you know, putting up signs, giving directions, guiding incoming freshmen, transfer students, and their families through orientation, singing and cheering, giving advice on majors, helping pick classes, collaborating and working with faculty and staff, giving presentations, planning nighttime activities as the freshmen, like, never thank you for. And most of all, you spend time with your fellow PAs, like complaining, right? Just like a little bit, and like napping, and no, I'm just kidding, I'm kidding. But see, the summer is really when you're tested mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? Like, there are 6 a.m. wake-up calls and like 10 p.m. end times. But the real fun and real bonds, right? Like they were created between 10:01 p.m. and 5:59 a.m. So yeah, we didn't get much sleep. And once we completed our year that just seemed to go way too fast, Corinne, you know, one of the directors in orientation and parent programs, added all of us to this peer advisor alumni Facebook group. She was always really good at keeping us connected and at giving us shout outs so that each of us knew what the rest of us were up to in case we miss it, as one, does when you're so focused on hustling and, on your own life. And in that group, you can find peer advisors from like every single year. And I remember that recently Corinne gave a shout out to someone who was running for local office. I forget his name, but he was running for a position. And I remember looking at the post and being like, wait, like, I know him. Like, I've seen him around the community and, here in Miami, but I never really knew that he was, a peer advisor. So that day I got curious and I went through the list of group members and just saw greatness, like name after name of people that I knew, that I looked up to, who were doing great work. Lawyers, doctors, professors, politicians, business owners, and more. And if I wasn't already, seeing my name next to them made me proud to have been a peer advisor and to have represented FIU. After being a peer advisor, it's actually pretty hard to let go and accept the fact that you're no longer a peer advisor. You kind of just linger around the office and actually want to go back to doing all the work that you used to complain about in the summer. Hey, got any orientations coming up? As they're picking the new team. And you kind of go through this moment where you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do with my life now, without this, right? Corinne would schedule, You knew what you were supposed to be doing at all times. And so you wonder, what the next big thing is. And for me, that next big thing was volunteering. So I decided that I not only wanted to give back to FIU, but now I also wanted to give back to the global community in new ways. So I joined Alternative Breaks and studied abroad in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand through the Honors College. And while we were in Cambodia, we were able to teach English at a primary school and at a technical school for future teachers. And those two trips single-handedly changed my life for the better. It was while working with several organizations in Atlanta with Alternative Breaks, creating soap, feeding the homeless, and sorting through clothes donations, and teaching students for my first time ever in another country, that I realized that a lot of the problems that I had or thought that I had were not comparable to what others were going through in the rest of the world, where people were dying and had no access to clean water or food or shelter or healthcare. My problems were small in comparison. And these experiences taught me to be thankful for the things that I had, because things could always be worse. And anytime I complain about something, I think back to those two trips and remember that it could always be worse. So then I got involved with SPC BBC. And as a broadcast media major, I was spending more and more time at BBC and felt like I needed a way to get involved without having to drive all the way to MMC. And SPC really allowed me to explore my interests. I got to take an event from an idea to execution, and I thought I was really cool with my clipboard and timeline. And you learn to book and deal with talent and deal with hospitality, and we put on the first ever Bayfest. And I learned that I was actually kind of good at marketing. I originally joined SPC BBC because it sounded fun and a great way to get involved, and it was all of those things. It was all of that and more, but they don't tell you that getting involved is, what they don't tell you about getting involved is that you always end up leaving with a family, right? You keep joining all these organizations and you just keep creating these families, these little mini families. And while I was involved in SBC BBC, I also started getting, really close to the alphas on campus. And that's probably because a good amount of SPC members, coincidentally, were either alphas, becoming alphas, or wanted to be alphas. I don't know, it was really weird. And so by the time that the Miss Black and Gold pageant came along in 2015, it only made sense to go for it. And I was, on the last couple of months before that. And let's be honest, they probably still hate me for it. So I got to be Miss Black and Gold for a little over a year, and I think that my favorite part about being Miss Black and Gold, aside from wearing, the sash and crown to events and parties, because for some reason people are always really nice to people who wear a crown. Just try it. Go to McDonald's or something with a crown, just see what happens. I don't know. But aside from that, my favorite part was trying to bridge the gap between NPHC and the rest of the councils on campus. Trying to help, the alphas create relationships across organizations and help others realize that after all, we are one Greek community, because it seemed like people would forget that. And then before I knew it, it was somehow time to graduate. And what's funny is that when you're in college, you spend a lot of your time thinking about not being in college, and about graduating, and about what comes after college, and looking forward to days of sleeping in, no classes, no assignments, working in your field, and just doing whatever you want when you want. I graduated from FIU December of 2015, and reality set in. I had no job prospects. I was broke, and for the first time I had no plan. My last semester in school, I was interning at a radio station unpaid, but I thought that if I sacrificed myself and worked really hard, regardless of whether or not I was getting paid, eventually I would get rewarded for my hard work, right? And the plan was always becoming an anchor at a major TV network, but I realized that I never really thought that through all the way. I never really had a plan for how to actually make that happen. It takes years to become an anchor, and you actually have to be a reporter first and work in different markets, and there's a lot of politics. But I thought that just because I was good enough, interned at all the right places, knew people in the industry, I thought that somehow I would graduate and that there would magically be this dream job available for me that didn't exist right now. Because it's what I worked my entire college career toward. And so I graduated, and needless to say, I didn't become an anchor. That really hurt, guys. I'm still getting through that. No, I'm good. And for the next few weeks after graduating, I didn't want to leave my room. I couldn't leave my room. I wanted to avoid the much dreaded, "What are you going to do now after graduation?" question as much as possible. And I didn't want to leave my room until I had an answer for everyone. I remember being in my room and going to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. I looked up how much reporters, anchors, producers got paid, and you would think that this was something I would have done before I, chose a major, but as cliche as it sounds, I was never doing it for the money. Which I now realize is something that people say who aren't making any money. I'm kidding. But I was always doing it because I was passionate, right? But for the first time, I felt like the passion just wouldn't be enough. You can't pay bills with passion. And so looking at the lack of journalism jobs in Miami at the time, knowing that I would potentially have to move to a smaller market, looking at the lack of money I'd be making, the amount of hours I'd be working, possibly sacrificing time with my family, and just being on call at all times, a job in journalism started to seem less and less appealing. So I looked into other options. At the time, there were a lot of social media marketing jobs, and through my involvement in extracurriculars, doing marketing-related activities, I felt like I met enough of what the job post asked for. A week after graduated, I got a call from what would become my first job. They were looking for a social media and marketing representative, and so I went in for the interview and met with who would become my supervisor, and then after things went well, I met with the president of the school, who said that although I didn't have a lot of experience, they still wanted to give me a chance because they needed a fresh perspective, which I was really stoked about because no one else was really calling, and I was tired of being broke, and I would have taken anything at that point. And so I started working at Florida National University in Hialeah, managing all of their social media marketing at the start of 2016. And I didn't realize, I didn't like working there until like April. It was like January, so like 3 months later. Just a little after my probationary period was over. And it was spring break, and all of my friends were at the beach, and I was working an 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then it was summer, and my friends started going on vacation, and were on alternative breaks and study abroad trips, and I was like still at work. I was like, man, how do like people do this every day? Like for the rest of their lives. It's a lot. And I remember I would drive to work in the morning, and I would like think about like all the possible excuses and lies that I could say in the future to like get out of having to come to work in the future. And by the end of the summer, after 8 months of being in the workforce, I realized I needed a career change because I wasn't happy, and you're supposed to be happy, right? Like at work. And so to make my Cuban parents happy, I considered becoming a lawyer. Well, I did a little more than consider it because I signed up for an LSAT prep course with Blueprint LSAT at FIU, and best of all, it was like the perfect excuse to quit. So I told them I was going to law school and that I needed to focus on preparing to get in. And I started looking for jobs that had flexible hours so that I could focus on studying with high pay so that I could live the same life that my 8 to 5 afforded me, and I found field marketing and being a brand ambassador. I got a job working with Kind, promoting their products, and I went on to work there for about 2 years. A little after I left the job at Florida National University, though, I got a call from the same radio station where I interned unpaid before graduating, asking if I was interested in becoming a producer for one of their radio shows, which this time would be paid. And guess what I said? No. I said no. I turned it down. It was probably stupid, but my mind was set on becoming a lawyer, and at that point, nothing was going to stop me. Funny thing is though, like I went through the entire LSAT prep course, right? And I remember talking to like fellow classmates of mine, and I told them that I didn't really, like after doing all of that, I didn't really know if I wanted to practice law because I was considering, going to law school like to get the legal knowledge because it would come in handy, and going into debt just for a career that would come in handy just felt like a bad idea. And by then, I had also realized that I still really, really, really wanted to be an on-camera personality. And that I'd rather focus on doing that now because I could be a lawyer at any point, whenever I wanted. But becoming an on-camera personality seemed to have an expiration date. This was August of 2016, by the way. And by the end of that year, I became Miss Black Florida USA 2017. The pageant bug bit me back when I was Miss Black and Gold, and between Miss Black and Gold and becoming Miss Black Florida, I competed in about 6 other pageants even while working in 8 to 5. And after competing and losing by 1 or 2 points in several all-inclusive pageants where after the pageants the judges would come up to me and tell me how beautiful, photogenic, or talented, or great, that I was, and that I should have won, but I wasn't going home with any titles or trophies, I decided to search for pageant systems that celebrated women of color and allowed me to compete with natural hair and, lessen my chances of losing to women who, were fairer skinned and had straighter hair, and I found Miss Black USA. It was actually the first time I had heard of them, but Miss Black USA had been around since the 80s and never really seemed to get the mainstream recognition that it deserved. At the time, I figured that becoming a pageant queen under Miss Black USA was the perfect way to network, be on TV, get back to the community, get into rooms that weren't accessible to me at the moment, and best of all, allow me to represent and be an advocate for women of color and issues that people of color like me encountered. And, it was a pageant system that I could believe in and put my name behind. And I got to do a lot of good work while being Miss Black Florida. During the introduction, they mentioned a lot of the organizations that I got a chance to speak or to work with, and it was amazing. And after fulfilling my beauty queen job duties and attending events, fundraising, working out, eating healthy, practicing my talent, and looking my best all the time for 10 months, I competed in Miss Black USA. It was my first national pageant ever, and I ended up becoming the 16th finalist to make it to finals and became the People's Choice Award recipient that year. But I didn't leave with the crown. And I came back to Miami and told myself that that was the last pageant I would ever compete in. For those of you that don't know, you can usually compete in pageants until you're about 27, but I just could not put myself, my family, my friends, and my support system through that again. I was still supposed to be Miss Black Florida for another 3 months after I came back home until, the new queen was selected, but I just stopped wearing my sash and crown. I would go to events and people would be like, oh, aren't you, the beauty queen? Or aren't you Miss Black Florida? And I would be like, yeah, no, not anymore. And as silly as this sounds, I just didn't want it to be all I was remembered for anymore. I just knew I could be doing more. When they first asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I was in the 2nd grade, and I said I wanted to be a singer. They asked me again when I was in the 8th grade, and I said a fashion designer. Then they asked me senior year of high school, and I said feature writer for a magazine like 17 or Cosmopolitan. And when they asked me in college, I said a news anchor. Yeah, I was all over the place. And in a weird way, I felt like, or I feel like I became all of them, or better yet, had the possibility of becoming all of them by having become an entrepreneur. I started Major Marketplace, an online marketplace for minority businesses, December of 2017, not knowing the first thing about business. I was invited as Miss Black Florida to a forum titled Advocates for Change, hosted by the South Florida Women of Color Empowerment Institute, where Maggie Anderson, the CEO and the founder of the Empowerment Experiment, and the author of Our Black Year. And we won the 2017 American Entrepreneurship Award. And we were one of the winners of the 2018 Miami Herald Business Plan Challenge. And thank you. And now we're finally making money, which also feels really good. And most recently, I was recognized as a girl boss at this past year's Premios Juventud, which is an award show for Spanish-speaking celebrities on Univision, that I grew up watching and dreaming of hosting. But getting here was hard. People tell me, that I make it look easy or whatever. But running Major Marketplace has really been a roller coaster. People let you see what they want you to see. I let people see the success, the awards, the good times, but I rarely let you see the hardships. The not knowing how you're going to pay someone, not knowing if you're going to be in business next month or next year, and not knowing if you're going to continue getting customers. And it's been a huge learning curve for me. A lot of catching up to other founders who I would have to compete against in pitch competitions. There's a lot of doubt and dealing with my imposter syndrome, a lot of crying and sleepless nights, but it's all been worth it because I finally found something that I really and truly am passionate about. So I guess you could say I found my calling. And I think one of the main reasons why we've been so successful is because people are able to see the vision. They're able to buy into the mission and can see the potential, and sometimes that's good enough. Because in a world of people who want to be entrepreneurs and people who keep making excuses for why they can't start their own businesses, I think that people want to get behind other people who are just like doing it. And so as you go out and do whatever it is for you, here are 10 things that I want you to keep in mind, that I have learned throughout my journey, and that I wish someone else would have told me. The first, that people will always have an opinion. I've had people try to give me advice on things from what route I should take with Major Marketplace to what I should be doing with my love life. And when I first started Major Marketplace, any advice people gave me, I would consider and try to implement, and it became stressful and exhausting. And sometimes I'd be in the middle of doing one thing, and then someone would tell me to do something else, and I just felt like I was like running around in circles. And now I listen to what they have to say, write it down, and come back to it at another point, or I don't, because not all advice is good advice. Next, you don't need to know everything. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out and become an expert in something. On the contrary, that you should do. Go and try to become an expert, but don't go and try to become an expert in 20 different domains. Just aim for 2 or 3. Figure out what you're good at and learn as much as you can about those fields. And for the things that you're not good at, outsource them or find people to fill those holes within your team. Like, I consider myself an expert in branding and marketing, but I realize that finance isn't my strong suit, so I have someone for that. Also, you can't do it on your own, right? Like, regardless of what you end up doing, and especially if you become an entrepreneur, you're going to need to build a team around you, because the road to success is difficult and oftentimes it is lonely. And at the moment, I'm building 2 teams, one for my personal brand and one for Major Marketplace. And it's because I realized that there just aren't enough hours in a day for me to do everything. And also, if I want to reach goals sooner, I need people to help. Also, keep in mind that you need to be flexible. If your journey is anything like mine, it's going to be all over the place. And that's okay. Plans will change, people will change, and things will go wrong. So you need to be flexible and deal with things as they happen. You can't control everything, but you can control your reaction to things. Also, make sure that you're genuine to you, right? Just be you. Don't feel pressured to do things because other people are doing them or because everyone is telling you or pushing you to. A lot of times, it kind of feels like there's only one choice, when in reality, there's always more than one. Throughout my journey, I've turned down a lot of jobs or opportunities that, even though other people have told me to take, I didn't, because I wasn't comfortable being half naked or saying or doing certain things. And it always felt like the end of the world. If I didn't take the job, there may not be another one in the future, but next thing you know, there was, someone else calling. And so when I'm faced with a decision, I always ask myself, if I do this, what will it mean? Am I setting the right example? Always making sure to choose the route that is in line with who I am, what I believe in, and who I want to be or be seen as. Also, progress is more important than perfection. We have this tendency to wait until things are perfect before we show them to someone else or put our name behind something. But getting started, getting out there, and getting feedback along the way is just so much more valuable. So just stop worrying about being perfect. You also need to get out of your comfort zone, right? I moved to London in September to get my master's and to expand Major Marketplace into the UK. And making the decision to move to London was one of the hardest things I had to do. It was my first time moving away from home and my first time living on my own. It's first time in Europe and in London, and I knew that I wasn't going to have any friends or family nearby like I did in Miami, but looking back, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. And although I was going to have to sacrifice a lot, the return on investment was going to be huge. And, I don't think that I would have had the same experience if I went on and got my MBA somewhere in the States. So get out of your comfort zone. Be patient and trust the process because it does not happen overnight. Like, you're not going to become an expert overnight, you're not going to become famous or rich overnight either, and we usually hear these stories in the media of people who have made it, and for some reason, they always make it seem like the person, from one day to another became a success, when in reality, they've been working on their craft for 3 to 5 years, and this is just when we're first hearing of them. Next, people buy you and not the product. Most of the time, people are investing in you and your team and not necessarily the business or, business plan, because those things are going to change. So, it's better to invest in yourself, invest in being the best version of yourself, and, let the world take care of everything else. Lastly, if you're going to do the ice, do the ice. Now, I don't know how many of you watch Friends, but yeah. But there's this one episode in particular that always comes to mind, where Monica, who is a control freak, wants to plan a party, and Phoebe, who is careless and aloof, wants to help. Monica, being the perfectionist that she is, wanted to take care of everything to make sure that everything was smooth, because Monica is crazy. So she tells Phoebe, okay, whatever, you can help out with the party, but you can only take care of the ice. And the day of the party, there was ice everywhere. There were ice cubes and snow cones and ice sculptures, and Phoebe went all out and did the ice. And so the lesson to be learned here is that no matter how big or small the task, if you're going to do something, do it right and give it your all, because you never know who may be watching. So I get this question a lot now, what does the future look like for you? And honestly, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm trying to have a candid conversation with you all, I feel right now the opportunities just really are endless. And it's crazy because in my opinion, I'm really just getting started. And, but it does feel like I'm going in the right direction. And even though I don't know what the future holds, I have been thinking a lot about legacy, right? The legacy that I want to leave behind, and I encourage you all to do the same. I've been asking myself, okay, what do you want to be remembered for, and how can I make the most amount of impact? And I still don't really know, but Major Marketplace is a really good start. And at the start of this year, I made a bucket list of all the things I wanted to do before I died. And on that bucket list, weren't places I wanted to travel or anything. It was just more things that I wanted to do before I died. If, not, then I would have regrets. And on the list, I wrote things like teaching students, being on the cover of a magazine, most likely Essence or Latina, writing a book, hosting an award show, and having a house by the beach. A girl can dream, right? And the craziest thing about these crazy dreams is that for the first time, they really do feel achievable. Now it's just a matter of time. And even though I still don't really know where the next couple of years will take me or Major Marketplace, here's one thing that I do know. That my story is just getting started, like all of yours. I was in your shoes just a few years ago. And, really the way I see it, there's not much separating all of you from where I am today. And as I prepared for this talk, I went out and asked friends and fellow alumni what they felt FIU gave to them. And surprisingly, everyone said more or less the same things. They said things like network, a community, a support system, and a family. Well, FIU is your family too now. And win or lose, good or bad, our family is going to be here for you. So go out there with the confidence, knowing that we all have your back and are rooting for you. You're already on your way to becoming worlds ahead, you're here today. And so during the rest of your time at FIU, make sure that you prepare yourself. Think critically and solve problems that matter. Learn to write effectively, learn to collaborate with others, and learn to integrate technology into your work. Make mistakes, learn and understand what it means to be a professional. Learn from diverse cultures, races, ages, genders, sexual orientations, and religions. Find a mentor. Travel the world, even if that simply means taking a weekend road trip to a place you've never visited. Have a flexible plan for the next 5 years, and most of all, be a leader, because believe me, you never know where life will take you after you walk across that stage. Thank you.